Hello everyone, and welcome to Week 5's lecture. So today's lecture is going to cover both the 7 deadly logical sins and the 7 deadly logical fouls. Let's start by talking about some logical sins. Basically, all logical fallacies come down to bad logic. Deliberative argument requires a proof and a choice. Some questions you want to ask to see if you are being presented with a fallacy are, does the proof hold up? Am I given the right number of choices? Does the proof lead to the conclusion? And ultimately, who cares? Let's talk about the first deadly sin. This one is known as the false comparison. This presents two things that are similar, so they must be the same, right? No. Some of the logical fallacies include the all-natural fallacies. We see this on a lot of food labels. To check and see if something is actually natural or if it's all natural, you want to make sure that you look for the hyphen. Generally speaking, hyphenated all-naturals are not actually something that is produced from nature. False comparisons also appeal to popularity. Everyone's doing it, so you should do it too, right? No, absolutely not. If everyone was jumping off a bridge, does that mean that you should do it? I would think not. False comparisons also include the reduction to absurdity, or reductio ad absurdum. It also includes the fallacy of the antecedent, a false analogy, and, of course, a unit fallacy, which comes down to bad math. The second deadly sin is the bad example. The example that the persuader uses to prove the argument is false, unbelievable, irrelevant, or wrongly interpreted. This includes hasty generalizations and, of course, misinterpreting evidence. The third deadly sin has to do with ignorance as proof. This argument claims that the lack of evidence proves something that doesn't exist. Example, fallacy of ignorance. The fourth deadly sin is called tautology. This is a logical redundancy where the proof and the conclusion are the same. An example of this would be Gertrude Stein's famous quote, "A rose is a rose is a rose." The fifth deadly sin is false choice. This is where the number of choices given is not exactly the number of choices that actually exists. This includes many questions and false dilemma. The sixth deadly sin is a red herring. This distracts the audience from the main issue and includes the straw man fallacy. The seventh deadly sin is the wrong ending. This is where the proof failed to lead to the conclusion. Some examples of this are the slippery slope, the post hoc ergo propter hoc, and the Chanticleer fallacy, all of which can be found described in detail in your text. Now let's talk about sleazy sophists and the 7 deadly fouls. Fouls, by the way, with a capital F, will be your password for the quiz this week. Fouls argue simply to win, rather than win over their opponents. And as you recall from earlier discussions, this is the distinction between a fight versus an argument. Remember that deliberative argument, the kind that we seek to do, seeks to win over your opponent. The objective should always be avoiding a fight. You want to avoid the 7 deadly logical fouls that turn arguments into fights. Foul number 1 is switching tenses. Remember that deliberative argument is the stuff of future tense. This is the stuff of action. It asks, what are we going to do about X? Has the most potential to accomplish goals. Remember, again, arguments that focus on blame and values rarely accomplish anything but fighting. Foul number 2 has to do with inflexibility. This is refusing to hear the other side, sticking to your opinion, using the voice of God. It makes you appear close-minded. Foul number 3 is humiliation. Humiliation debases someone or something, and it doesn't involve a choice. It also has the ability to harm your ethos or credibility. Foul number 4 is using innuendo. This is an insulting hint and a form of humiliation. It is a vicious backspin on an innocent truth, and it is very difficult to deny. An example of this, for some of you Office Space fans, might be when the Steve Carell character says, "That's what she said." Fouls number 5 and 6 include threats. These are the kinds of arguments used by the stick. This takes tribal talk to the extreme and of course takes away choice. This may also include physical and rhetorical obscene gestures. The final foul is number 7. Never argue with utter stupidity. This includes an arguer's inability to recognize his or own fallacy. And of course, you never want to argue the inarguable. Have a great week.